I rise to contribute to the debate on the Gambling Taxation Bill 2023, and Deputy Speaker, any opportunity that I have to get up and declare that I'm a gambler, I will do so, but certainly will profess that I've never been a very good gambler, but I'm very consistent. I persist with it till I improve, but I struggle over times, let me tell you. So, and I've bet on all forms of racing. I like variety. I do love the horses, and I noticed the member for Tarneit, who's just left the chamber, is a good horse racing fan, and I do love the horses. But Melton is the heart of harness racing in Australia, if not in Victoria, but if not Australia. And I do get to Tabcorp Park quite a bit in Melton for many events, but also to have a bit of a flutter on the harness races. I do remember my time as an ambulance paramedic when I used to go to the trots at the old Melbourne Showgrounds. And we would go into the first aid room when we first got there, and we would have our race book marked off by people in the first aid room of who was going to win on that night. I can tell you, I went home many nights without backing a winner, even though the book was marked by people that thought they were experts. But anyway, these sort of things happen. So, Deputy Speaker, this is the final tranche, the fourth tranche of implementing the Royal Commission recommendations. And earlier the member for Preston made a good point, and it's a bad look when the government initiates a Royal Commission that needs to look at an agency and the nefarious and harmful operations and practices that they have. I make reference to the member for Hastings, and I congratulated him on his contribution. And he reminded us earlier that there are no new taxes in this bill, and this is about making sure that the multi-international tax-dodging mammoth global conglomerates are paying their fair share back to this state for our people of this state to benefit by that money that they drag out of the pockets of Victorians and the vulgar profits that they extract from local communities across Victoria. This bill does many things, and Deputy Speaker, I'm very pleased to see that our government giving the strength to the regulators to regulate, and it's been a bugbear of mine for many years that some of our regulators have not regulated well, and I'm pleased to see that this bill will allow that. The bill consolidates and amends various taxation acts, but it introduces new and strengthened casino tax arrangements starting in a few weeks at the beginning of the next financial year. It's also extending the application of the Taxation Administration Act 1997 to strengthen arrangements and cover casino taxes payable by Crown Melbourne. It also reenacts them to provide a single legislative vehicle to address gambling taxes administered by the Commissioner. It will ensure that Crown are lodging their returns and paying their taxes monthly rather than it be for an extended period of time. And this requirement is going to ensure that there is a regular and enforceable watch on their actions. And obviously it's much more easier to enforce something when you see the regularity or any irregularities in what they're supposed to do. And we can't allow the situation of deliberate exploitation to get a hold again, and it's something that was exposed, and this is what this bill is trying to address. So a casino operator will be required to register with the Commissioner and lodge returns and pay casino tax and the community benefit levy in respect of each month from July 1, 2023. Electronic gaming machines operated by a casino operator will be subject to the same tax structure as electronic gaming machines operated by the venue operators with club entitlements. The bill also provides for the imposition of a Keno tax. And if you don't know what Keno is, I'm not going to waste anyone's time explaining it, but making sure that Keno entities are lodging a return with the Commissioner monthly and paying their taxes, and not a new tax for hard-working Victorians. It's what Keno's entities owe, and people that have been into any licensed clubs will obviously see the TV screens with Keno numbers on. It's probably a broader version of Tats Lotto to some degree, where you try and select some numbers and try and win some money from it. I don't think I've ever seen anyone win on Keno, but I assume there has been people that have won on it, but not in many of the clubs that I've been to. So it certainly, it details an increase in the rate of the wagering and betting tax from 10% to 15% from next year. And I should say that the point of consumption tax introduction is a good thing. And in 2019, Victoria introduced a point of consumption tax for sport and race betting. And we now know that this means that all sport and race betting losses by Victorian punters are recorded in Victoria for taxation purposes, regardless of whether they bet with a Victorian bookmaker or one licensed interstate. So this is information that is published by the State Revenue Office, and it shows that estimated sport and racing betting losses increased from $1.65 billion in 2019-20 to $2.58 billion in 2021 to 2022. And it's a significant amount of money in regard to betting losses. So by increasing the tax, these tax minimising vampires, I'll call them, not only bringing them into line with other states, but benefits Victorians in more ways that we can imagine. And the Victorian racing industry has been able to stabilise and build on their industry. And these changes are very welcome by the Victorian racing industry and their stakeholders. And I spoke about it, the racing industry and in particular the harness racing industry, about how many jobs it provides. I think in harness racing it's about 4,300 jobs. Certainly in the thoroughbred industry it would be that, if not more. And it's important. And the good thing about these industries is that families can get involved. And there's a lot of history behind families involved in regard to these industries, both horse racing and even in the harness racing. So the taxes are directly redistributed to vital and benevolent funds like the Anzac Day Proceeds Fund and the Hospital and Charities Fund, which are two very worthy causes that can be utilised in a very positive way. I spoke earlier this week about the harm that comes from gambling. And it may help if I quantify it. In the LGA of Melton, there's $167,460 is spent on pokies every day. That's in excess of $61 million per year. And we have 7 pokey venues in the LGA of Melton with 523 poker machines. And that's only half of what they're allocated, so they can have a lot more than the 523. Melton's the 13th LGA over the highest expenditure across Victoria on gaming machines. They're allowed to have 824 gaming machines. And as I say, it amounts to, on average per day, spent by an adult on a gaming machine in the Melton LGA of around $452. So, you know, if you factor that in, about that's an average per person, you know, there's obviously a small amount of people that are spending a lot of money on gaming machines per day, considering that a lot of people wouldn't gamble at all. So you just got to wonder, those people that are averaging $452 per day on a gaming machine, and we go on about the cost of living, and yet, you know, we're dragging this money out of people's pockets, I would say unnecessarily, without the proper supports and things like that. You know, and of course, there's a lot of enticing people into these gambling dens. There's a lot of incentives for people to gamble and bet, in particular the online stuff nowadays. It's almost like a magnet dragging money out of your pocket. And in particular, for someone like me at my age, I can't get my head around the electronic gambling. I've got no idea how to do it. I'm pleased that I don't do it, even though I enjoy gambling. I'm one of these old-fashioned ones that would walk up with, you know, fill it out with a pen in a TAB and stick it in the machine and get a ticket back. I love to go to the races and bet with the bookies because it's easier. Doesn't mean to say you win, as the member for Tarneit explained earlier. But I just can't get my head around the electronic gambling, and I won't get involved with it, and I hate the incentives that they give, and I think the younger generation get caught up with it. This is an incredibly important bill. I'm pleased that the opposition are not opposing it, and I commend the bill to the House.